Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandanam Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Purajikacharya Ashtottara to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Purajikacharya Ashtottara to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavindra ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktabinda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 9th day of March 2021 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 9, the most confidential knowledge, text number 2, and we're in the middle of the purport, so we'll chant the verse again. Page 375. Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitram Idamuttamam Pratyakshavaghamam Dharmyam Susukham Kartamabhyayam Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitram Idamuttamam Pratyakshavaghamam Dharmyam Susukham Kartamabhyayam Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitramidamuttamam 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 Pratyakshavaghamam Dharmyam Susukham Kartamabhyayam. Mike, want to try? Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitramidamuttamam Pratyakshavaghamam Dharmyam Susukham Kartamabhyayam. Rajavidya, the king of education. Rajaguhyam, the king of confidential knowledge. Pavitram, the purest. Idam, this. Uttamam, transcendental. Pratyaksha, by direct experience. Avagamam, understood. Dharmyam, the principle of religion. Susukham, very happy. Kartam, to execute. Abhyayam, everlasting. Translation. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. So Srila Prabhupada is systematically going through in this purport, explaining each of these words, and in the middle of page 377, which is where we stopped, he is going to explain Pratyakshavaghamam, directly perceived. It is said that the execution of devotional service is so perfect that one can perceive the results directly. This direct result is actually perceived, and we have practical experience that any person who is chanting the holy names of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, in course of chanting without offenses, feels some transcendental pleasure and very quickly becomes purified of all material contamination. This is actually seen. Furthermore, if one engages not only in hearing but in trying to broadcast the message of devotional activities as well, or if he engages himself in helping the missionary activities of Krishna consciousness, he gradually feels spiritual progress. This advancement in spiritual life does not depend on any kind of previous education or qualification. The method itself is so pure that by simply engaging in it, one becomes pure. In the Vedanta Sutra 3.2.26, this is also described in the following words: Prakashas to karman yabhyasat. Devotional service is so potent that simply by engaging in the activities of devotional service, one becomes enlightened without a doubt. A practical example of this can be seen in the previous life of Narada, who in that life happened to be the son of a maidservant. He had no education, nor was he born into a high family, But when his mother was engaged in serving great devotees, Narada also became engaged, and sometimes, in the absence of his mother, he would serve the great devotees himself. Narada personally says, Uchishta-lepan anumodito dvijay, sakrit smabunje tadapasta kilbishaha. Evam pravittasya vishuddha chetasas, tad dharma evat maruchi vajayate. In this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.25, Narada describes his previous life to his disciple Vyasadeva. He says that while engaged as a boy servant for those purified devotees during the 4 months of their stay, he was intimately associating with them. Sometimes those sages left remnants of food on their dishes, and the boy who would wash their dishes wanted to taste the remnants, so he asked the great devotees for their permission, and when they gave it, Narada ate those remnants and consequently became freed from all sinful reactions. As he went on eating, he gradually became as pure-hearted as the sages. The great devotees relished the taste of unceasing devotional service to the Lord by hearing and chanting, and Narada gradually developed the same taste. Narada says further, Tatvandvaham Krishna Katapa Gayatam Anugrahe Nashanavam Manoharaha Tashadhyame Nupadang Vishwanvata Priyashavasyangamamabhavadnuchihi. By associating with the sages, Narada got the taste for hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, and he developed a great desire for devotional service. Therefore, as described in the Vedanta Sutra, Prakashas Chakarman Nyabhyasat. If one is engaged simply in the acts of devotional service, everything is revealed to him automatically and he can understand. This is called Pratyaksha, directly perceived. The word Dharmyam means so he goes on, that's Prakashas. Let's see the other word. Prakashavagamam Dharmyam. Understood directly, and then the word Dharmyam. So he's expecting Dharmyam. The word Dharmyam means the path of religion. Narada was actually a son of a maidservant. He had no opportunity to go to school. He was simply assisting his mother, and fortunately his mother rendered some service to the devotees. The child Narada also got the opportunity, and simply by association achieved the highest goal of all religion. The highest goal of all religion is devotional service, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam. Savaipang samparo dharmo yato bhaktaradhokshaje. Religious people generally do not know that the highest perfection of religion is the attainment of devotional service. As we have already discussed in regard to the last verse of chapter 8, Vedeshu Yaggeshu Tapaksu Chaiva, generally Vedic knowledge is required for self-realization. But here, although Narada never went to the school of the spiritual master and was not educated in the Vedic principles, he acquired the highest results of Vedic study. This process is so potent that even without performing the religious process regularly, one can be raised to the highest perfection. How is this possible? This is also confirmed in Vedic literature. Acharyavan Purusho Veda. One who is in association with great acharyas, even if he is not educated or has never studied the Vedas, can become familiar with all the knowledge necessary for realization. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chukshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, Srila Prabhupada's very nicely systematically organized purport here. He explained these two words, Pratyakshavangamam and Dharmyam. So just to review, Raja Vidya, the first idea is that it's the king of education. And Prabhupada in the first paragraph, he names some of the leading other philosophers. Classic India is full of different kinds of philosophers. And here he names Gautama, Kanada, Kapila, Yagyavalkya, Shandilya, and Vaishvanara. So they all saw the truth from a separate vision, but none of them, Kapila I think is the materialistic Kapila he's mentioning here. They missed the point, the actual source of all true philosophy, which is pure devotional service. And then he says, finally there is Vyasadeva, the great Vyasadeva who compiled all the Vedas and who wrote the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Vedanta Sutra and its commentary, Srimad Bhagavatam.
So the end of all knowledge, the knowledge culminates in devotional service. This is the king of all knowledge, as Krishna describes it here. Now, why is that? One of the reasons is that we have a certain limited capacity to know or to understand if we're simply relying on our material mind and senses. The great edifice of knowledge that's been built up in civilization, like over the last 5,000 years, aside from the Vedic revelatory knowledge, scientific knowledge, technical knowledge, all kinds of medical knowledge, is huge, vast. I remember when I was working as in the hospital back in '72, and I was running around the hospital. I was doing inhalation therapy, so I got to, go to different parts, and they had a little library there. It was just a small room, but they had all these periodicals. There's a kidney periodical and there's a brain periodical, probably a bunch of them, and a whole bunch of things. And they were keeping up with the latest discoveries in that field. So I sometimes go in there and browse. I could, of course, not understand many of the terms and things. And that was like 50 years ago, almost 50 years ago. And there are all a tremendous amount of knowledge in each one of these separate medical fields, and it's 10 times, 100 times more now. So this is all relative knowledge because it's based on the limited senses and mind. And we learn this verse that Prabhupada quotes in the purport, Savat Pangsang Paro Dharma Yato Bhakti Hokshaje. This is a verse in the second chapter, first canto, text number 6, where Sutta Goswami is answering the question of the sages. They say, O Sutta, you have studied all the Vedas, please distill the essence of them and describe to us that dharma by which the soul can truly be satisfied, supersedity. So he immediately answers, that dharma is real, can really provide pleasure to the soul, ultimate satisfaction, which engenders pure devotional service to Krishna. Paro dharma yato bhakti hokshaja, and he uses this term at hokshaja, which if you study the Bhagavad Gita, I've noticed it when it comes up, and with the database you can easily search, especially when it's speaking about the initial stages of devotional service. At hokshaja simply means that reality, that personality, who is beyond the reach of our material senses and mind, which is the very definition of transcendental. Transcendental. Meaning that on your own, Vijay was giving these 4 different kinds of evidence. One of them was pratyaksha, right? And which is basically the ascending process, the scientific process. We use our instruments, not just our eyes, but our telescopes and microscopes to increase the acuity of our vision, The computers, of course, which have been created and developed and increased over the years. And every other thing we have. But it's all pratyaksha. It's all dependent on our limited senses and our limited mind to understand. So that there's a limit to what we can understand. We can't understand anything that's transcendental, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendence personified. By definition, he is beyond our ability to see or to know by our ascending process. So the only way to know him is to please him, so that he'll reveal to us. This whole process is based on revelation. And so that dharma that we engage in must evoke the mercy of the Lord, so he reveals himself to us. And that's why devotional service is the king of knowledge, because it takes that into account. It is a science of invoking the Lord's mercy so that he reveals more and more to us about the absolute truth. So that's the first point. And therefore it's confidential. Krishna keeps this knowledge confidential because he knows that he'll be purchased by it, right? In other words, if you develop devotion to him, then he will respond, and he'll come down to ultimately for the pure devotee under the control of devotee, like Mother Yashoda. So therefore, it's very confidential. He's not giving it away so easy, because this is the most valuable thing there could possibly be. How to get revelation of God, how to attain the highest goal of freedom from birth and death and reinstatement in our all blissful eternal life. So very confidential and purifying. This is the other aspect, next aspect. Pavitra Midam, supremely purifying. Why do we need purification? Because our knowledge is covered and it's distorted by eons of accumulated anartas in the heart, if you want to call them that. Material desire, anger, frustration, depression, madness, and all of this karma, and it's a big dust on the heart. That famous polishing the dusty heart, right? Cheto darpana marjanam. So all of this prevents us from seeing ourself, what to speak of the Supreme Self. We don't even understand that we're spirit, and we have no clue of the Supreme Spirit. So we need purification, and Krishna is the supreme purifier. He is purity personified. He cannot be contaminated, and when whatever contacts him becomes purified. Example of the sun: you take something out in the sun, and after some time it'll become purified and cleansed. So, and then we get to today's explanation of these two words, pratyakshavangamam and dharmyam. So, directly perceived. That's the first thing. Prabhupada says, it's so perfect that one can perceive the results directly. Now, if we couldn't, the power of this process we've been giving, centered on the chanting of the holy name, is so great that even from day one, or just one good kirtan, if one is just in attendance and is hearing, you may not believe much at all. But if you're chanting, hearing, and especially if you're chanting, there'll be some experience there. And that's how this movement started. You look historically, Prabhupada finally got a place where he could chant. It might have been on the Bowery in some loft, drafty loft somewhere. But still, it was his place, and he turned it into a little temple, and he got them chanting. You had some musicians, like Mukunda Maharaj, Michael Grant, who was a skilled musician, and others. So he brought the instruments, added the attractiveness to it, and so he had, he was able to generate interest and direct perception. They would come back, and there was also the prasadam factor. They wouldn't come back for that. You can directly perceived. So that's a tremendous value. Because it's not that, yes, you perform the severe austerities and you go for many, many years and maybe several lifetimes, and then you'll get liberation. Well, who can be that patient? We want to get we want to get high right now. Let's be honest. That's what's going on. So they came. They wanted to get high. Some people and even had a pamphlet famously, "Stay high forever." You must have heard of that. Prabhupada told them, yeah, you could write that, because that's what they were experiencing. They were experiencing this is a kind of a high, and there's no bad effects. There's no bad side effect. So that's the initial immediate perception. But what to speak of the mature perception? In other words, it's Prabhupada always says there's a beautiful verse. He would refer to this, or sometimes just use the example. And Bhakti, this is in the 11th canto, the teaching of the 9 Yogendras, the great sons of Rishabdev. In this series of verses, there's a series of lessons. Each of the 9 goes through, and they're all wonderful. This is the first one. So in the verses there, near the end of the series, he says, Bhakti padeshano bhavo vidakti ranyata chaisha trika eka kala papadyamanasi yatashantaksu tushti pushti chadapayo anugasam. Does anyone know what those words are? Anugasam, taking bite by bite. This is the famous taking a meal analogy. So he says, for one who is truly surrendered under the Supreme Lord, papadyamanasi, these things happen practically simultaneously. These 3 things: bhakti padeshanubhavo, bhakti 1, padeshanubhavo 2, and bhakti anyata cha. And Prabhupada would often quote this verse just as far as the first couple of words of the second line, because it gives a complete idea. So bhakti here means the actual experience of rasa. It's not bhakti yoga. It's not the sadhana bhakti leading you to. This is the actual experience. So for one who's fully surrendered to the Lord, moment by moment, these things are experienced right away. So it means the pleasure of rasa, with the Krishna. So that, and para isha anubhava, a direct experience of Krishna within and without. You're seeing him within, you're seeing him in the world like that, and sometimes he even reveals himself, and of course we have the deities, but it's para isha anubhava. And this is always the measure. Am I getting advanced or not? Here's how you can tell. Virakti anyatra cha means detachment from everything else. This is the famous vairagya. Notice the virakti and vairagya. I think virakti is an adjective, I'm not sure. No, a different kind of noun. But it's vairagya. So those three means the actual experience of the pleasure of serving Krishna and the reciprocation, the experience of the Lord, and the detachment from everything else. Who experiences this? Bhakti Padeshana Virakti Anyatcha Chaisha Trika Eka Kala. They come in simultaneously. For who? Papadnyamanasya, for the surrendered soul. Just as Yata Ashtantaksu Tushti Pushti Chodapaya Anugasa. So he has these three words. Two are very similar, Tushti and Pushti. If one sits down to a wonderful feast of prasadam, I always like to give the feast of like Nishingade's feast, because that's a late one. It's like at the when at evening time, and it usually it's the time of year when it's usually about 8 o'clock. So it's been a long fast, and you're ready to honor some prasadam. So the prasadam comes out, and say the prayers, honoring the prasadam. So with each bite, you're experiencing these three things. Tushti. Tushti is satisfaction, the pleasure of eating. That's the bhakti. The pushti, nourishment of the body, right? That's the paresha anubhava, the direct experience of Krishna. This is real nourishment for the soul. And that's why you find some of our greatest acharyas, the 6 Goswamis. I was just reading this morning about Raghunath Das. It practically, boggles the mind how austere he was in terms of eating. I mean, here's someone who was equivalent of a multimillionaire today. He had that facility, He was the lone heir of a huge, fortune that had been built up. Landowner, they were landowners, Haranya Majumdar is his uncle's name. Maybe it's his nickname. Haranya means gold, So anyway, he gave it all up as soon as he met Lord Chaitanya, and he had that whole thing of Panihati, with getting the mercy of Lord Nityananda. So he was sold out even before he renounced. But then, as soon as he was able to escape, they were having guards, because he had no taste. He had a beautiful wife, a beautiful kingdom, and his mother's parents were freaking out. He wasn't interested. He was just wanted to go to Lord Chaitanya. So he went. He finally escaped, and he had to stay off the main roads because he had all these guards and people looking for him. And he's wandering in the forest down to Puri from Bengal. And so he could eat like 3 days out of 12 or something. I mean, it was he started out with that principle of austerity and vairagya, and he displayed that very quickly when he joined Lord Chaitanya. And I won't go through the whole story, but he continued to do that when he went to Vrindavan. I was just reading. He was, I think it was it 12 years or a good portion of the Anjalila he spent there in Puri with Lord Chaitanya. So he get direct witness of it, and he wrote descriptions of it. And when he went to Vrindavan, he intended to commit suicide. Lord Chaitanya and Swarup Damodar had departed, and he was just so bereft and heartbroken, he wanted to jump off the hill, go over downhill. But then when he met Rupa and Sanatan, they said, no, you can't do that. We have to hear from you, these Anjalila. So 3 hours a day he would spend on Radhakund, where he lived. He would just discourse on, Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. So, but meanwhile, he's decreasing even more his eating. Every other day, every third day, he'd have a little buttermilk, and he was so skinny, the Vijvasis would feel pain to seeing him. But what was his experience inside? He was practically had nothing, just like the other Goswamis. They lived under a tree. They had no residence. They were hardly eating or sleeping. They reduced to nil. But inside, Gopi Bhavada Samatabda Lahi Kallola Magnomaho, they were experiencing the highest ecstasy of the Gopis' love for Krishna. Again, it's like an ocean, they were diving in it, So they didn't feel any suffering. So this is Bhakti Paresha Unubhava, direct experience of Krishna, which is just like nourishment for the soul. That's what they're eating. That's where they're living on. And as far as attraction for anything else, unimaginable. Virakti anyatacha. So this is direct experience. Each one of those elements is direct experience, just as you directly experience in prasadam. So that's pratyakshavagamam. Prabhupada describes here. And then the purification, right? Yeah, Pravitramidam Uttamam. Oh, Dharmyam, the Dharma. So, as I referred to, what is Dharma? Dharma is essential for human life. This was referred to, I think, this morning. It's a central part of our philosophy. Is that because we are, so entangled in the material world, and we have a history of coming up through all these animal species and everything, that's all part of our makeup. And this is part of the tragic degradation of the soul, out of touch with Krishna. When you turn away from Krishna, then we're in touch with the modes of nature. And the more we get covered over, the more we sink down into more and more ignorance. And that's what animal life is. It's just a different degrees of ignorance. And like you go into this plant species, it's even more. So, human life is meant to be a life of dharma or religion or discipline, say, that enlightens us. In other words, clears away all of this ignorance and this accumulated dirt on our heart, our consciousness, so that the true nature of the soul can come out. We know that from this philosophy and even from some of our direct experience, how it just feels right when you're actually in Krishna consciousness. You have a little moment of intense connection, maybe probably with chanting and so many things, and you're experiencing a little bit of the light. The clouds are lifting, and the sun is coming through. It's hard to stay there, but at least we can aspire to regain it. So, Dharma means human life, which is a life of purification. Dharma, like everything else, can be contaminated by the modes of nature. And that's why the Bhagavatam at the very beginning, second verse, Dharma Projit the Kaitavotra, that in this literature, cheating religion is kicked out, far away. Meaning that there is such a thing. It looks like real religion, but really it's just religion in the service of material desire. You see? That's called cheating religion, Kaitava Dharma. And you'll find some of those more described in the Bhagavatam itself. So we don't want cheating Dharma, we want the real thing. And that Krishna says, this is real Dharmyam. This is the supreme Dharma that you're going to be here. And that will systematically purify your consciousness, your mind, your body even, everything, so that you'll progressively regain your original state. And you'll be progressively enlightened by Krishna from within. This is very, very nicely explained in that same series of verses, beginning with Savai Pungsang Paro Dharma. He discusses Varnashram, says, Dharma is not meant for artha. It's not meant for that. This is a perversion. Dharma is meant for awakening pure love for Krishna. And whatever artha you do get from your Dharma, you should be used in the service of the Lord. Otherwise, that becomes an attachment. And what is kama? Kama is meant for simply fulfilling the needs of the body, living as simply as possible. Not for satisfying the senses with sense gratification. Kama sinendriya priti labo jivete yavata. Jivete yavata means getting enough so that you can keep body and soul together. In other words, just don't live extravagantly. Then what should you aspire for? What should you live for? And this is back again to the Vedanta Sutra. Jivasya tattva jigyasa. One should live to inquire into the absolute truth. What is this? What is the truth? The nature of the absolute truth, which is explained in the next verse as Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. 3 different stages of understanding: the impersonal Brahman, effulgent super soul, and ultimately the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, how to realize that? Basically, he says, "Tasmad ekena manasa Bhagavan sapata shotavyak kirtitavdyascha dhyayas puryascha nityada." And here, this is one of these tasmad verses or etavad verses, which means, okay, now he's summarizing. Therefore, with one pointed mind, with full concentration, ekena manasa Bhagavan Sattva-tampati, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the Sattvatas, the devotees. What should you do? Hear about him. Shotavyak. Sing it, chant about him. Meditate, remember, dhyayak, pujas, worship constantly, nityada. As much of the day should be filled with those activities. So that means that one has to have faith and one has to have a taste for that hearing. That's the key, how to get the taste for hearing. And so that comes from serving the great souls who have that taste. Shushusho Shodadhana Sa Vasudeva Katha Ruchi. The taste for Vasudeva Katha, taste for Krishna Katha. Syan comes into being Mahat Sevaya, by serving the Mahatmas, serving the great souls who are walking places of pilgrimage, basically. And once you have that taste, then you can acquire the sword of remembrance. From hearing, chanting comes remembrance. Yadunasya yukta karma gruntinda bandhanam chindanti kovedastasya kona kuya katara team. It says that by hearing and chanting, one get the anudya, which is the remembrance, which is asina, like a sword. We have to cut those knots in the heart. Long time we've been tying them and fulfilling them, and now we want to cut the attachments, And so finally, then he has these 5 verses at the end, Shinvatam Sukata Krishna, when you're really hearing and chanting nicely with full attention, with devotion, Krishna within the heart, he takes the initiative, and he cleanses away the abhadras. That's why it can't happen by any other means. He doesn't respond to anything but devotion. The yoga is not going to make it, certainly karma, jnana, dhyana. No, it has to be bhakti, hearing about it and chanting about Krishna. And then there's a progressive purification. We chant this verse every time I do Bhagavatam Clare, Nashtaprayesha Bhadreshu, Nityam Bhagavata Sevya, by constantly serving the 2 Bhagavats. Bhagavat means in relation to Bhagavan. Notice how important these long and short A's are. Bhagavat compared to Bhagavan, see? Bhagavan, Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhagavat, that in relationship to Bhagavan. The book and the person, both has to be served. Book by hearing, chanting, studying, reading, and person by hearing and obeying and serving. So then purification goes on, you become free of the modes of nature, and then again, direct perception. Here comes even Prasanna Manaso Bhagavan Bhagavad Bhakti Yoga, Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam. Vijnana means direct perception. I know of something, jnana, I know all of the details. Vijnana, I have direct experience of the truth of it, of Krishna. And the final stage, all the knots in the heart are cut asunder by progressive purification, and Krishna is working in the heart. No more doubts. Why should I have doubts? I'm getting direct perception. You can doubt something you haven't perceived, but if you directly perceive it, you see how that nourishes your faith. So, now all your karma, good and bad, is all destroyed. And you see the Lord in the heart. You see Krishna, He reveals Himself to you. So that all comes from practicing this Raja Vidya, this practice of Krishna consciousness.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Haribol, Darvari, go ahead.
You mentioned Tusti, Pusti, and what is the last one?
Chodapayo. Chodapayo means your hunger is diminishing with every bite. Meaning that there's several ways of understanding that. And that is that you're becoming detached more and more. First of all, when you're eating, you're really detached from everything else. You're concentrating, And at the same time, your hunger is diminishing by eating or by consuming direct Krishna experience in this way. Your hunger for material things is decreasing. You understand?
Yes.
That's the detachment. Detachment is increasing.
And then Bhagavad, thank you. Bhagavad and Bhagwan is, you said Bhagavad is the book, and then, Bhagwan, person.
Well,
what is Bhagwan and person?
Yeah, Bhagavan, we know, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's Krishna, right? Bhagavan, he who possesses these 6 opulences. Bhagavata is something in relationship to Bhagavan. In this case, the person Bhagavat, and the book Bhagavat. If you look in that purport to that verse, which is 1, 2, I'll tell you in a second. I think 18 or 17. 1, 2, 17, 18. Look at one of those two. It starts with Nashta Prayeshu. Nashta Prayeshu. And you see the whole purport is about the book Bhagavat and the person Bhagavat. One has to be serving them all the time. Okay?
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Haribol. Okay, let's wind up on this purport. Now he's explaining the final portion, Susukam Kartam Abhyam. Right in the last full paragraph there in 377. Oh, wait a minute. We did that already. We're already in Dharmyam. We are at the 379, I think, right? Yeah, I mean, isn't it? For the first full paragraph, 379. Yeah, Susukam. The process of devotional service is a very happy one, Susukam. Why? Devotional service consists of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. So one can simply hear the chanting of the glories of the Lord, or can attend philosophical lectures on transcendental knowledge given by authorized acharyas. Simply by sitting one can learn. Then one can eat the remnants of the food offered to God, nice palatable dishes. In every state, devotional service is joyful. One can execute devotional service even in the most poverty-stricken condition. The Lord says, Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam. He is ready to accept from the devotee any kind of offering, never mind what, even a leaf, a flower, a bit of fruit, or a little water, which are all available in every part of the world, can be offered by any person, regardless of social position, and will be accepted if offered with love. There are many instances in history. Simply by tasting the tulsi leaves offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, great sages like Sanat Kumara became great devotees. Therefore, the devotional process is very nice, and it can be executed in a happy mood. God accepts only the love with which things are offered to Him. It is said here that this devotional service is eternally existing. So he's coming to the end of the explanation. Kartam avyayam. There's that word avyayam, remember? I keep pointing out, it keeps appearing in the Bhagavad Gita. Avyayam means inexhaustible, doesn't decrease. Eternally existing. It is not as the Mayavadi philosophers claim. Although they sometimes take to so-called devotional service, their idea is that as long as they are not liberated, they will continue their devotional service. But at the end, when they become liberated, they will, quote, become one with God. Such temporary time-serving devotional service is not accepted as pure devotional service. Actual devotional service continues even after liberation. When the devotee goes to the spiritual planet in the kingdom of God, he is also engaged there in serving the Supreme Lord. He does not try to become one with the Supreme Lord. As will be seen in the Bhagavad Gita, actual devotional service begins after liberation. After one is liberated, when one is situated in the Brahman position, Brahmabhuta, one's devotional service begins. Samak sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param. By executing devotional service, one can understand the Supreme Lord. No one can understand the Supreme Personality of God by executing Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, or any other yoga independently. By these yogic methods, one may make a little progress toward Bhakti Yoga, but without coming to the stage of devotional service, one cannot understand what is the personality of Godhead. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is also confirmed that when one becomes purified by executing the process of devotional service, especially by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita from realized souls, then he can understand the science of Krishna, or the science of God. Evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha. When one's heart is cleared of all nonsense, then one can understand what God is. Thus, the process of devotional service of Krishna consciousness is the king of all education and the king of all confidential knowledge. It is the purest form of religion, and it can be executed joyfully without difficulty. Therefore, one should adopt it. The perfect purport, you know. I wanted to go back because I neglected a good part of Prabhupada's explanation here of how it's, what is it? Pavitram idam uttamam, I think he's describing, yeah. That it's so purifying, and this whole description of Narada Muni, and the importance of contact with the pure devotee. You know, we sometimes forget how Prabhupada is present in his books. He wanted us to study his books because he said, I am there in my books. Everything I wanted to say. If you really want to know me, read my books. So this is how Prabhupada is, how shall I say it? He's the agent, by which Krishna is purifying us. The words that we're reading, they're Krishna's words, but they're given by Prabhupada, and he's given all of his realizations in his heart in these purports. So that association, it's a direct association, not only with Prabhupada, but with Krishna also, is what is purifying us. That's the purification. Vidunoti. It says right in the verse there, Shinbatam Sukata Krishna, Punyashavanakin Ridyantakstaja Badrani, Vidunoti Suritsatam. The abhadras are being purified, the unwanted things, the impurities, by Krishna from within the heart, through the agency of his pure devotees. And that's what this whole little story here is about, Narada Muni. He had no prerequisites. His great fortune was to be the son, he didn't know who his father was, his maidservant, simple lady, no high birth, no knowledge, no money. But she was pious enough so that the sages chose to spend their time at her humble home, And Narada was there, and then, being a nice boy, he was doing services, and he took the prasadam. And as he went on eating, Prabhupada says that, so purifying the remnants of great souls. Plus, he's hearing. So the result of his becoming purified, he got the taste. He got the taste for hearing what they were chanting, and in this way, he becomes Narada Muni in the next life. So this is very, very encouraging for us, because what do we have? We're coming to the table with basically not much more than Narada had. Not great education, training, or anything like that. But the willingness to sincerely hear from and serve the great souls, especially this great soul Srila Prabhupada. When we read his books, attending these classes, trying to understand what he's saying, this is the greatest service. Believe me, it's the service that really pleases him. And especially when we try to adopt these principles in our lives and give them to others. Then you get pratyakshāvagama, the direct experience of Krishna consciousness. So this is perfect purport, and therefore one should adopt it. I mean, this is you could, as I mentioned, I don't know if it registered yesterday. I think I mentioned that this whole purport was written as a separate essay at one point. I think in BTG or somewhere, And you can see how well organized it is at the beginning, middle, and end, and it comes with the final conclusion. So we've been blessed with this, and there are several lectures on this you can hear from 26 Second Avenue. There's one famous one, So we can consult that if you're interested. All right, we have a few minutes, so let us launch into text 3, which also has a substantial purport. So now, this is the process of learning and teaching is used with, he's contrasting now, This is, I've just given you two wonderful nectar verses that what's happening in this chapter, but on the other hand, here's what happens if you have no faith. Ashradhana purusha dharmasyasya parantapa aprapyamam navartante mrityu samsaravartmani. Those who are not faithful in this devotional service cannot attain me, O conqueror of enemies. Therefore they return to the path of birth and death in this material world. Purport. The faithless cannot accomplish this process of devotional service. That is the purport of this verse. Faith is created by association with devotees. Very important concept. Satsanga is essential. Faith is created by association with devotees. Unfortunate people, even after hearing all the evidence of Vedic literature from great personalities, still have no faith in God. They are hesitant and cannot stay fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. Thus, faith is a most important factor for progress in Krishna consciousness. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that faith is the complete conviction that simply by serving the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, one can achieve all perfection. This is the second time Prabhupada is referring to that verse in the Bhagavad Gita. That is called real faith. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 431:14, Yatataro mulanishechanena chipyanti tatskanda bhujo prashaka pranopaharat chayatindriyanam tatayvasavahanamachutejya. By giving water to the root of a tree, one satisfies its branches, twigs, and leaves. And by supplying food to the stomach, one satisfies all the senses of the body. Similarly, by engaging in the transcendental service of the Supreme Lord, one automatically satisfies all the demigods and all other living entities. Close quote. Therefore, after reading the Bhagavad Gita, one should promptly come to the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita. One should give up all other engagements and adopt the service of the Supreme Lord, Krishna, the personality of Godhead. If one is convinced by this philosophy of life, that is faith. Now, the development of that faith is the process of Krishna consciousness. Just think of that a bit. It's simply a deepening, a progressive deepening of the faith through direct experience as well as hearing from authorities and serving. In the third class are those who have no faith. Even if they are officially engaged in devotional service, they can't achieve the highest perfectional stage. Most probably they will slip after some time. They may become engaged, but because they haven't complete conviction and faith, it is very difficult for them to continue in Krishna consciousness. We have practical experience in discharging our missionary activity that some people come and apply themselves to Krishna consciousness with some hidden motive. And as soon as they are economically a little well situated, they give up this process and take to their old ways again. It is only by faith that one can advance in Krishna consciousness. As far as the development of faith is concerned, one who is well versed in the literatures of devotional service and has attained the stage of firm faith is called a first-class person in Krishna consciousness. And then the second class are those who are not very advanced in understanding the devotional scriptures, but who automatically have firm faith that Krishna Bhakti, or service to Krishna, is the best course, and so in good faith have taken it up. Thus they are superior to the third class, who have neither perfect knowledge of the scriptures nor good faith, but by association and simplicity are trying to follow. The third class person in Krishna consciousness may fall down, but when one is in the second class, he does not fall down, and for the first class person in Krishna consciousness, there is no chance of falling down. One in the first class will surely make progress and achieve the result at the end. As far as the third class person in Krishna consciousness is concerned, although he has faith in the conviction that devotional service to Krishna is very good, he has not yet gained adequate knowledge of Krishna through the scriptures, like Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. Sometimes these third-class persons in Krishna consciousness have some tendency toward karma yoga and jnana yoga, and sometimes they are disturbed. But as soon as the infection of karma yoga or jnana yoga is vanquished, they become second-class or first-class persons in Krishna consciousness. Faith in Krishna is also divided into 3 stages and described in Srimad Bhagavatam. First-class attachment, second-class attachment, and third-class attachment are also explained in Srimad Bhagavatam in the 11th canto. Those who have no faith, even after hearing about Krishna and the excellence of devotional service, who think that it is simply eulogy, find the path very difficult, even if they are supposedly engaged in devotional service. For them there is very little hope of gaining perfection. Thus faith is very important in the discharge of devotional service. Okay, so we don't have time to explore this. I think maybe we'll do this verse tomorrow, since it's such an important verse. But let me share. This is actually a verse about faith. It's about the Chataka bird, and how he's always praying and has faith that the cloud will give him rain. It says, how's it go? Yeah. Vidacharimai dandam dina bando dayangva nipatatashatukoti ni malangva navambas. No, that's wrong. Maybe that's it. Vidacharimai dandam dina bando dayangva gatadihna babatta kachadanya mamasti. I think that's the verse. I may have mixed 2 verses up. My brain is not working. I had the COVID shot, so I have an excuse. My brain is a little bit. But I think I remember the English. The Chataka subsists on rain; it catches in midair, and so it's always praying to the cloud to send its fare. Yet though that cloud may send a thunderbolt instead of rain, that bird continues praying fervently despite the pain. Just like the Chataka, I have fixed my mind upon one goal, and that is you, O Lord, most kind to every fallen soul. So whether it is a punishment you send or mercy sweet, I'll always pray to you for service to your lotus feet. So that's faith. Even though there's so many difficulties in devotional service and things may not go right, you continue praying and having full faith that Krishna will one day bless us. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.